Something in your life has shifted, and you can't quite explain it. The things that used to feel solid have started to move. Doors that always opened are suddenly closing. Relationships that felt permanent have quietly grown distant. The job, the season, the routine that once fit you like a glove now feels strangely tight, like you've outgrown a life that hasn't changed on paper. And underneath it all is a restlessness you didn't ask for and can't seem to shake. You lie awake at night, wondering what is happening to you. You replay the last few months, trying to find the moment it all started to slip. You feel like the ground beneath your feet is moving, and nobody around you seems to notice. You're carrying a quiet confusion that you can't even put into words, because from the outside, your life looks the same. But on the inside, you know something is changing. And here is the lie the enemy rushes in to whisper the moment that shaking begins. He says your life is falling apart. He says you're going backward, that you had your chance, and now everything is unraveling. He says God has stepped back and left you to figure it out alone. He wants you to interpret every closed door as rejection, every lost relationship as abandonment, every uncomfortable shift as proof that you are off track and out of favor. Because if he can convince you that the shaking means destruction, you will spend all your energy trying to rebuild the very thing God is trying to move you out of. You will cling to the old season with white knuckles, and you will fight the hand that is trying to lift you. But what if everything the enemy is calling a breakdown is actually a setup? What if the discomfort you're feeling is not the sign of your life collapsing, but the sign of God repositioning you for something far bigger than the place you're being moved out of? What if the very things that feel like loss are actually the first steps of the greatest promotion of your life? In Jeremiah 29:11, God says something to a people who had lost almost everything. He says, "I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you a future and a hope." Read that again slowly. He spoke those words not to people sitting comfortably at home, but to people who had been uprooted, displaced, and carried far from everything familiar into a foreign land. In the middle of their greatest disruption, when everything they knew had been taken, God called it a plan. What they experienced as chaos, He was orchestrating as direction. What looked like the end of their story was actually the hinge of it. And that is the truth the enemy never wants you to grasp. God doesn't waste a single shaking. When He shakes what is comfortable, it is almost always because He is moving you toward what is greater. So let me show you 6 signs that God is repositioning you for something bigger. And I need you to pay attention all the way to the 6th, because the last one is the sign that confirms all the others. Sign 1. The doors that always opened are suddenly closing. For years, certain things came easily to you. Certain doors swung open the moment you approached them. But lately, those same doors won't budge. The opportunities dry up. The yes you expected becomes a no. The thing that always worked simply stops working. And it makes no sense, because nothing about you has changed. Think about the Apostle Paul. He was on fire to preach in Asia. A good plan, a godly plan, a plan that any reasonable person would have blessed. But the Bible says the Spirit of God prevented him from going. The door he expected to walk through was supernaturally shut in his face. And it wasn't punishment. It wasn't a sign of failure. It was redirection. Because that closed door pushed him toward Macedonia, and the gospel entered an entire continent through a door he never would have chosen on his own. When God closes a door that used to open, He is not ending your story. He is rerouting it toward a place your old plans could never have reached. Sign 2. You feel restless where you used to feel content. There was a time when your current season fit you perfectly. You were comfortable. You were settled. You had finally stopped striving. But now a holy restlessness has set in. The same place that once felt like home now feels too small, like a coat you've outgrown. Think about how an eagle teaches its young to fly. For a season, the nest is soft, lined with feathers, warm and safe, the perfect place to grow. But when it's time for the eaglets to mature, the mother eagle stirs the nest. She pulls out the soft lining. She makes the place that was once cozy suddenly uncomfortable. Not because she's cruel, but because eagles were built to fly, not to sit in a nest their whole lives. If you are feeling restless in a place you used to love, it may not be discontentment, and it may not be ingratitude. It may be God stirring the nest, because He knows you were built for the sky, not the safety of the branch. Sign 3. Familiar relationships are quietly falling away. People you assumed would be in your life forever are drifting. Conversations get shorter. Connections fade without a dramatic ending, without an argument, without closure. And it leaves you grieving and confused, wondering if you did something wrong. But think about Abraham. When God repositioned him for a destiny that would bless the entire world, the very first instruction was to leave his country, his people, and his father's household. The promotion required separation, not because those people were bad, and not because he had failed them, but because they belonged to the chapter he was leaving, not the one he was entering. When God is moving you somewhere bigger, He often releases the relationships that were anchored to your old assignment, to make room for the people your future actually requires. Some connections are for a season, and the end of the season is not the end of your worth. Sign 4. God is putting a new dream in your heart. Out of nowhere, you can't stop thinking about something, a burden you didn't have before, a vision that feels far too big for your current situation. It keeps you up at night. It shows up in your quiet moments, and you can't explain where it came from or why it won't leave. Think about Nehemiah. He was comfortable, employed in a position of honor in the king's palace, far from the ruins of Jerusalem. By every measure, his life was settled. But God dropped a burden in his heart for a broken city he wasn't even living in, walls he had never seen with his own eyes. That burden wouldn't leave him. It interrupted his comfort, it broke his heart, and it eventually reorganized his entire life. When God places a new dream in you that doesn't fit your current circumstances, it is rarely an accident. It is a preview. He is showing you the shape of where He is taking you next, long before you can see how it will happen. Sign 5. You're being stripped of the things you used to lean on. One by one, the supports you depended on are being removed. The safety net, the title, the relationship, the income, the certainty, and it feels like loss. It feels like everything is being taken from you at the worst possible time. But think about Joseph. Before the palace, he lost his coat, his home, his freedom, and his reputation. He went from his father's favorite to a pit, from a trusted servant to a prison cell. Everything he could have leaned on was stripped away, until all he had left was God and the dream God had given him as a boy. And that stripping wasn't destruction. It was preparation. God was removing every lesser thing Joseph might have trusted, every crutch that could have stolen the glory, so that when the elevation finally came, Joseph would know without a doubt exactly who lifted him. When God strips you down before he builds you up, he is not abandoning you. He is teaching you to stand on the only foundation strong enough to hold the weight of what's coming. Sign 6. And here's the one that confirms all the others. In the middle of all this upheaval, you feel a strange and unexplainable peace. By every logical measure, you should be panicking. Your circumstances are shifting, your supports are gone, your relationships are changing, your future is unclear. And yet, somewhere deep inside, there is a quiet calm you cannot explain to anyone. Think about Jesus, asleep in the back of the boat while a violent storm threatened to sink it. The disciples were terrified, experienced fishermen certain they were about to die. But Jesus slept, not because the storm wasn't real, but because he knew the outcome was already settled before the first wave ever hit. That peace in the middle of your storm is not denial, and it is not foolishness. It is confirmation. It is the deep witness of your spirit telling you that the one who is moving you has already secured the place where you're going. When you have peace you cannot explain in the middle of the shaking, it means the shaking is from God. So let me tell you what is really happening in this confusing season. You are not falling apart. You are being repositioned. You thought you were being buried. You were actually being planted. The closing doors, the restlessness, the relationships falling away, the new dream, the stripping, and the strange peace in the middle of it all are not 6 different problems happening to you by accident. They are 6 confirmations of one single truth. God is moving you, and he is moving you up. The discomfort you feel is not the absence of God. It is the evidence of his hand. He loves you too much to let you stay small, too much to let you settle in a place beneath your calling, too much to leave you safe and unfulfilled in a nest you were never meant to die in. And so he does what only a good father would do. He disturbs the comfort. He shakes the familiar, and he moves you, even when you can't see where you're going, toward a future you would have never had the courage to choose on your own. Do not try to rebuild what God is dismantling. Do not run back to the nest he is stirring. The shaking is not your enemy. The shaking is the setup. And on the other side of this repositioning is a version of your life that the comfortable old season could never have contained. So, if this message stirred something deep inside you today, drop this prayer in the comments right now. Lord, I trust you with this season. Reposition me for everything you have prepared. Say it as your declaration of faith. Say it as your surrender to a God who never wastes a single shaking. Subscribe to the Restorer's Voice for biblical truth that anchors your soul through every season. Share this with someone whose life is shifting and who needs to know they are not falling apart, they are being set up. Keep your head up. You are not being buried. You are being planted, and the harvest is going to be greater than anything you left behind.